John, you want to do some justice to where Minnesota's at?
Sure. So in Minnesota, we can't crow too much. The way we talk about it is we're doing not too bad. I think Minnesota has been able to be a model for a lot of the kind of policies that we want to see, really because we just had a confluence of good political fortunes. So somewhere back around 2011, where Wisconsin started going in yonder direction, Minnesota kind of went this way. And you can see, frankly, the evidence of that up and down the policy front. So in 2013, we passed a solar energy standard that was in addition to the renewable portfolio standard that we had. We created a community solar program for our largest investor-owned electric utility, which is also Excel. We increased net metering from 40 kilowatts, which is actually quite low among national standards, up to a megawatt, although just for investor-owned utilities. And then we also created what was called a value of solar tariff. So actually, to get to that question of a feed-in tariff, that was the inspiration behind the value of solar concept, was to say, rather than having this conversation about net metering and debating whether or not is it worth it to everybody or is it not worth it to everybody, why don't you, the utility, calculate what the value of solar is, and we'll set up a commission-approved formula for you to use. And then if we need to pay extra to make solar happen, then we can do that through an incentive program. And we got the value of solar part, and we didn't get the incentive program. And as it turns out, the utilities were not very interested in calculating and publishing what the value of solar was anyway. But we've got it, and what's actually really useful about it is that it has been an important tool for us to have a conversation. It is calculated by Excel every year, and it's a filing that they publish publicly. And it is a great tool for us to make to have a good public discussion about when they'll say, hey, we can do solar for this cheap, utility scale, and this net metered stuff is not worth so much. We can say, hey, look here, actually it is worth quite a lot, and it's worth more than your retail rate according to this calculation. And this calculation is based on the benefits that we all care about, both to electric ratepayers, but also to society and the environment. So it's actually a very important policy, even though we're not using it for anything officially. It has not replaced net metering. It is a really good tool for us to have the conversation about what is solar worth, and to have an option for the utility to compensate solar providers in a different way other than net metering, should they so choose. So we've had all of those things. Because our governor is now in his second term, he has turned over the entire Public Utilities Commission. So like Tyler mentioned, pretty much every time utilities have brought forth something that's lousy, they have rejected it, whether that's fixed charges, fees based on being solar customers, and a range of other things. They've also been very helpful in conversations about access for low-income customers to renewable energy and energy efficiency. We've actually been able to flip the conversation a little bit from, hey, anytime anybody invests in energy efficiency, even if they're rich, it benefits everybody, to, hey, the only people who benefit, in terms of their pocketbook when rich people do energy efficiency is rich people. What about the poor folks? How can they participate? The second thing we have that's happening in Minnesota that is feeding into all of that good state stuff is that starting in 2012, before the politics at the state level became really good, the city of Minneapolis was looking at down the pipe of a climate action plan that had no chance of succeeding. 2/3 of the emissions in Minneapolis come from gas and electric usage, which are controlled by investor-owned utilities. I was part of a group of organizations that said, we need to change this. At the time, climate legislation was dead at the federal level. We had no chance at the state legislature prior to 2013. So we said, we got to do something around this. And what we hooked our claws into, if you will, was that utilities do have these so-called franchise contracts with investor-owned utility companies that say, for this time period, we are going to have an agreement where some money comes into our general fund, and we make an agreement not to make you file a permit for every time you want to fix a wire or a pole or anything else on public property. And they're generally not energy policy documents, but we said, why not? They could be energy policy documents. We have this climate action plan, and we're going to need your help. And by the way, to make you understand that we're serious about this, we're going to see if we can put municipalization on the ballot, about having the city take over both electric and gas companies. And we didn't end up going down that road. The utility company said, hey, before you go that far, we want to help you. We like this climate action plan. We'll help you get there. And so Minneapolis has what's called a clean energy partnership with its gas and electric utility. It's a first in the nation kind of arrangement in which we are trying to innovate and find ideas and ways that the city and utility can work together. That means that the city can do interesting things like figure out how it can use rental licensing to make sure that multifamily homes and renters have access to energy efficiency programs, that we can do community engagement and make sure that people who don't read their utility bill inserts hear about utility programs and that there are financing tools available for them, but also then how Minneapolis can model new kinds of programs and policies and ideas that other cities can use, but also that we can take to the Public Utilities Commission and say, hey, we tested this out in Minneapolis. it's a great policy, you should expand it statewide. So a lot of really interesting and good things happening and that we hope to share with others.
Thank you.